What is up, good people? Today we're going to have the first podcast episode. And since I've been a member of Staxwell's Discord since he started it, he held a tournament recently, and the runner-up was a guy called Belltoller. And I was asking around, like, oh, he's playing Lexi, and I was repping myself, like, oh, I hope someone from Denmark wins. And some guys from the Discord says, hey, Belltoller, he's Danish. So I thought that was really cool. So the runner-up in Staxwell's tournament, and I asked him if he wanted to come on and tell us a little bit about himself, his experience in Flesh and Blood, and just talk all things Flesh and Blood. So Belltoller, welcome to. Maybe you would like to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Victor, and Discord I'm Belltoller, and I love playing Flesh and Blood. I've been playing since the late Tales of Aria meta, so I started just before Everfest, and in the beginning it was just a casual armory play, but I quickly got very interested in competitive play as well. And it's just very cool that there are these options for online tournament. It's a little difficult from Denmark sometimes to attend larger tournaments, so it's very nice that you can play online as well.
Yeah. So, is that your tournament experience, playing armory events locally, and then this one online tournament, or have you been in other tournaments?
Participated in all the tournaments that are held in Denmark, so the ProQuests and some skirmishes and so on. And I was attending Calling Little as well. Unfortunately, not the Pro Tour, but that is the one large tournament I participated in, and that was a great experience. So we are going to Antwerpen in 3 weeks. And trying calling experience again.
That's awesome. What's it like? How old are you?
I'm 27.
Okay, so I'd expect this is not your full-time occupation. You may be doing something on the side. What's it like? Because Flesh and Blood, as it is right now, it's a very technical game. It takes a lot of time to study the meta, get repetitions in, practice and spreadsheets, and getting like practice play together with other players and stuff. What's it like having a full-time job and competing at what people would consider a pretty high level?
Well, it's definitely difficult, and it takes a lot of time, but fortunately I just find playing a lot of fun. So I have a friend who's studying at university, and I've been too until recently. I just got my master's degree, so we've met once a week and played during daytime because we had our schedules clear. So that's a lot of time we've spent on it, but it doesn't feel like work at all. It just feels like play testing. So, it does take a lot of time, and it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. But I enjoy it a lot, and it doesn't feel like work. So it's all good. With that said, my other friend, Kenny Pedersen, just went to the Pro Tour, and he definitely did not prep as much as many of his opponents because he has a full-time job. He is part of the testing group with me and Andreas, but we don't get to play enough. So you gotta play the hand you're dealt, and he did very well, even though he didn't get as much testing in as some of the other guys.
When talking about testing, what are your opinions on like in-person testing and maybe doing things on Talishar? Are there I imagine Talishar, you have a great opportunity to get repetitions in, but you don't get the heads-up experience of sitting in front of someone. Can you tell, like, do you have any opinions for or against, or just thoughts on it?
I think the biggest thing about Talisha is that there's no Elo system or MMR system. So the people you're meeting are very different. And sometimes there is the competitive queue, but it doesn't really mean anything. Sometimes you'll meet some very, very janky builds there, and maybe by some very new players as well. So I actually play a lot on Talisha, but I consider it like gold fishing plus. So it's useful. It's very high volume. So I see my lines many times, but I do not consider my opponent's plays to be what they would necessarily do. If I don't know the hero that I'm playing against that well, I will not take away huge learnings from Talisha experiences. So yeah, it's the high volume, and then the high intensity or the high quality reps I get in person with people I know, good players. Also recently, because I participated in the Staxwell tournament, I got to talk to some of the guys I played against and did some online testing with some of them. That's also very useful because I know they are good players as well. And one guy, Austin Reddington, was participating in the Pro Tour, and he wanted to get some Lexi reps in. And so we played against each other, and that was very useful for me as well. Just playing against good players is a very useful thing.
Maybe like a short talk on the whole Staxwell's tournament. What did you play, and why do you think you actually made it as far as you did? And like I was watching the finals, and you got like your opponent to 1 life, and he managed to beat you out, which was like, I'm a big fan of Ranger, and not a big fan of Oldhim, and seeing you like, I was rooting for you all the way, like seeing you get him down so far in life and then watch him pull away with the win was very frustrating. But can you tell me about what did you play? Why do you think you got so far, and your thoughts on the tournament in general?
He actually said GG at one point because he thought he was dead, and then I didn't have the lethal. I only got him to 1, so that was so sad. Yeah, so it was my first online tournament. I played a lot on Talisha, but no organized play, and actually it worked really well. So we were met up in Discord, and we played via Talisha, but talking during, so there was no confusion. And it was a single elimination tournament, which was a little bit weird. It was like a top 8 from the beginning, where you were kicked out if you lost just 1 round. But that also actually worked quite well. It meant that we didn't have to play that many rounds, and it was a great lot of fun. A lot of good players. Peter Budenzik was double Battleharden winner. He was part of the tournament as well, and yeah, it was just great practice and very fun. And I did end up winning a Marvel Icelander, even though I didn't pull away the case. So yeah, I had a great time. And if he ends up setting up tournaments each month, I would be happy to participate again.
Do you think? So there's a lot of I wouldn't say controversy, but there's a lot of debate about like, you can play Talisha. It kind of takes away the whole like ethos that James White wanted in the game, like it's flesh and blood. But it does make for the possibility to make people come together and make people who are living in more, I wouldn't call Denmark like an inaccessible region, but more inaccessible. You can bring people together. Do you think there's a big future for online events? I mean, you could always play over webcam, that's a thing, but having like full access to all the cards and stuff, do you think that online play is going to be a bigger thing going forward?
I think there will be no official tournaments online, because Flesh and Blood does not have an online client, and of course they're not interested in us playing on third-party software and not buying the cards. And as you say, it also goes against some of the ethos of Flesh and Blood experience. I also personally think that in-person play is much more fun when it is possible. That said, I'm driving 9 or 10 hours to Antwerpen in a couple of weeks to go play, and I will play for 2 days, and then we will make the drive again. That is a long trip and a big commitment. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time, and it's just not feasible that I could do that every weekend, for instance. But I could definitely play in a Staxwell-like tournament every weekend, and I would enjoy doing so. So I think it will never replace physical tournaments, and it will never be as premier. But tournaments at the case level, or maybe with slightly higher prize pools, I see a lot of opportunity for privately organized tournaments that way. It was great playing against a lot of American players and some Polish players. It opened up for the community to meet in a different way, because of course I would not have participated if it was a case tournament in the US.
So in terms of organized play, and I think that LSS has made a great structure. You can participate at the Armory events and then there's a very clear way to a very high level of organized play. But as you just said, like, you would be traveling X amount of hours to get to Antwerpen. It's very expensive. You would not be able to participate every week if there was tournaments every week. What do you think about the incentive structure in terms of, when you get to that higher level, is it feasible that it's something that you could do full time? Do you think that the incentives are big enough? Because, depending on where you end up, you might get a cold foil, a gold foil, some money, Do you think the incentive structure is good as it is? Or what do you think they could do to improve it?
So I'm definitely hoping that there will be more money in the tournament structure, and I think there will be too. I think that is the goal, but it is very impressive as it is from a quite new company that it is so the OP scene is so well developed already. Definitely not feasible to live off of it yet. I think maybe there's one or maybe two pro players that have taken it as their full-time job, and that is something you can do if you win a pro tour or worlds. Then you get so much money at once that you can quit your job and say, okay, I'll focus on this for 1 or 2 years. But as Michael Hamilton has said many times, even if he is the best player in the world, and even if it is by a wide margin, he has still had extremely positive variance to win as many tournaments as he did last year. You do need luck to get first, and price structure is such that if you do not get top 8, there's very little money involved, especially at the lower levels, the battle hunters and callings. So I think it's not reasonable if you don't have big enough nest egg that you can live off of it, even if you do not do well, because you cannot reasonably expect a certain amount of income per month if you just try to live off of tournaments. There's simply not enough of them, and the pricing is too top heavy. You can't expect to win every time. Added to that is that the battle hardened support is very poor, I think. The expected value of participating in a battle hardened is not great because they are so popular. So they will have as many participants as a calling, but their pricing will be much, much worse. You really have to get top 8 for it to even be just close to paying out for travel and accommodation and so on. But actually you have to get first or second, where you get the PTI, for it to probably be a reasonable expense. And that's just highly unlikely with 500 plus participants.
However, I understand what you're saying. Obviously, the more people there are in, the harder it is to actually get to the top. However, it is a testament, and I think this is like one of the things I'm most excited about as an old Magic player coming to Flesh and Blood. And like when I started getting into Flesh and Blood just as a collector in 2020, it was like, do I even want to buy these cases? Like people are talking about it's a scam, it's a money grab, it's a rug pull, you know what's going on. And then seeing today, like, oh, you know, there are almost too many people at the events to make it worth it. And however frustrating that is as a player, it is a testament to how healthy the game is becoming, which is of course a very a positive note for how the game is going to go forward in the future, and the more people that participate.
That is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
But the Pro Tour, for instance, the expected value is so much better because top 64 gets a monetary payout, and of course, if you go very far, you get a lot of money. The issue with the Battle Hardened is that the pricing structure is not scaled to the size of the participants, the amount of the participants. So I think it's absolutely great that so many people want to participate, but it seems that the tournament setup has not quite caught on yet. So in many Battle Hardens in these big weekends, after the Pro Tour and Calling, the Battle Harden will be day 3, where all the pro players who did not end up in top 8, they will be playing in the Battle Harden. And often you will have to go undefeated to even reach the top 8, because there are not enough rounds for that larger player base. And you will get almost nothing if you do not become first or second. And that is okay, but I think it is the Battle Hunt was envisioned as smaller tournaments than they have ended up being, and that is, of course, a very good problem to have. But I think the pricing structure has maybe not quite caught up.
So James White and LSS, if you're listening, something to improve. So one thing I wanted to ask you is that we saw, I wouldn't say like a big shakeup in the meta at the Pro Tour at Baltimore, but one thing I found encouraging is that we saw less and less of Oldhim, and we saw like Azalea and Lexi and Dromai come more into play, which I thought was very cool. One of my favorite players is Brody Spurlock, because he plays Azalea, and I think he does really amazing in relation to how young he is. But can you maybe talk a little bit about how you think that this recent Pro Tour has kind of, it seems to me, and I'm not the most insightful player in the world, but it seems to me that the meta might be changing a bit. What are your observations about the meta on after Baltimore?
So Outsiders was a huge boost to Ranger, and Baltimore definitely reflected that. I still think that Oldhim was the best deck going into the weekend, but I might have to reevaluate that. Maybe Lexi was the better choice. I think it's definitely one of those two. I myself, I've been playing Lexi because I cannot get myself to play Oldhim. The playstyle is simply not interesting to me. I'm a Runeblade player at heart. That is what I've been playing the most, and I've only recently picked up Ranger. But in every meta, I try to find the best deck that's also similar enough to Runeblade that I can accept playing it. And I think Lexi's a great deal of fun. It seems after the weekend that Romai was a bit underestimated, and maybe Oldhim was a bit overestimated. He did end up winning, of course, the Oldhim. Michael Feng is an absolutely amazing player, so that was a very well-deserved win. And a very impressive performance. But it definitely seems like it could have gone another way. There was only one Oldhim in Interveiw. And I think a lot of the Lexis have beaten a lot of Oldhims during the weekend, which is definitely something she can do. She can go so wide, with these huge mini combo turns, that he cannot block her out. And then he needs to pivot to a more aggressive stance, and then they're on her turf. I thought Oldhim would be maybe not the most represented deck, because it does take a certain disposition to play Oldhim well. But I thought it would be the deck with the best conversion, and it seemed that Lexi did at least as well, and that's very interesting for the meta going forward.
Are you talking about you needing a certain disposition to play Oldhim? Mm-hmm. As I'm still kind of getting better at the game and understanding the different classes, I was amazed at listening to the commentary about when Michael Feng was playing, like, so since the start of the game he was like pitching the poppers to make sure that when like on the second rotation or third rotation of his deck, he had them to kind of like pop the last phantasms, and like just knowing that since the start of the game he was planning for these eventualities. As someone who's played competitively, what kind of advice would you give to new players who want to improve? And so just like how to skill up, how to get better at the game. Maybe people are feeling that they are plateauing, or they want to change a new hero. They don't know if their hero is good. Like, how do you improve as a player?
I think the most important thing is playing against other good players. That's how you get into the habit of playing well, and you realize that this small mistake you made earlier has cost you the game. I think if you play against players that are worse than you can definitely learn from that, but you will maybe not get punished for the mistakes you make, and that can incite some bad habits. The second part of that is that you should really, and this is something I'm guilty of not doing myself every time, but you should test with a specific purpose in mind. So you shouldn't just mindlessly jam games. You should try to figure something out from each game. So be very mindful of what the learnings are from a particular game. So maybe you want to test Candromai, Fatigue, Lexi, and you're playing a game not to win that game, but to answer that singular question. So maybe you just full block all game, and at one point maybe a hand lines up where it would be more reasonable not to full block, but you've committed in this testing process to see if full blocking is a viable option. There's definitely a lot to be said for having real games in testing as well, because that preps you for high-level games and tournaments. But I think a lot of your time should be spent thinking consciously about specific play patterns and whether certain strategies work or not. Something we also do a lot in testing is showing our hand to our opponent if we have a difficult line, because we're not playing to win, we're playing to learn. So I will show my 4 cards, and I will talk to 3 different lines that I had lined up, and we will discuss the pros and cons. This way we get input from another player who knows both sides of the table, and this helps a lot in like breaking up certain habits maybe, and exploring new ideas and new ways to approach a certain line of play. And of course, the last thing is that I would recommend everyone read the Raid Times. I've written a few articles for them, and there are some very educational content in there. It definitely doesn't make up for testing, but it provides some fresh ideas that you can bring to the testing table. So you do not get stuck in your old ways, and maybe you get a new perspective on something.
And maybe having a player who's much better than me at hand, I'm of course going to exploit that possibility. So tomorrow, I'm playing my first in-person event, or event is not. I'm just going to fabtcg to play, and I didn't have enough cards to play my Azalea deck, so I basically just went through all my bulk and made a Rhinar deck, because I know and I've only played Blitz before, and I actually made a Blitz deck, but then it turned out that I can only play Classic Constructed. So I'm going into an event with a hero that I've never played, in a format that I've never played, and I'm completely prepared to get my ass kicked, and it's going to be a great learning experience. What advice would you give a person like me for an event like that?
I think the most important thing at Armory level is just to show up and tell people that you're new. Our community is very good, I think, in Denmark. Everybody is very nice and helpful. So I think at the Armory level, people will want to help you. We often, in our community in Aarhus, we often provide decks for new players that show up that do not have decks yet. And it's very common that your opponent will talk through a line and explain why you shouldn't block like this or whatever. So I think, and that is of course part of the genius of the competitive tier system, that armories, you do play for something, but it's not so important that you will not help out a stranger who's new to the game and eager to learn. So I think at a lower tier event like you're going to tomorrow, I think definitely the most important thing is just showing up, telling them you're new, and try to absorb as much as you can. Ask a lot of questions if they seem open to that.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm gonna do like a vlog style video so people can see how badly I get my ass whooped. So I think what?
If you're building a deck from bulk, it's maybe not a great sign either.
I have one majestic. It's gonna be great, glorious.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Maybe we have time for one last question, which is because I'm mostly like on the collector side of Flesh and Blood as it is right now. I might get more into play. But something that this was kind of what made me start the challenge, the channel in general, is that I kept seeing these market videos from the US and looking at card market and seeing this huge discrepancy between what was going on in the US market as opposed to what was going on in the European market, which I thought was interesting. And my thought was always like, okay, so usually in Denmark we say like the US is like 2 to 3 years in front of what's going on in Denmark. So I thought like, oh, we kind of like have a time machine that I can look into the future and see what's going to happen in the market. Of course, obviously we know that you can't predict the markets and it's all dependent on the popularity and stuff like that. But have you noticed like similar patterns in, how things are usually cheaper here or the market is slower to react to meta changes and stuff compared to the US?
It does seem that there are some larger buyers maybe in the US, that the buyouts seem to happen reasonably often, where a card will spike in price because somebody bought 200 copies, and it will still be a few euros in the European market, because that was not the case here. I'm not a collector, so it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, except when when I want to build a new deck and I suddenly realize that the Codex of Frailty has spiked to 35 euros. I think there are a lot of like early day pains in Flesh and Blood. It's so popular, and it's gotten so much more popular in such a short time that they have to figure out the right balance in the amount they print. So you definitely don't want a short print, but you don't want to flood the market either. And at least where I live, it's actually very difficult to get sealed product right now. Everything is sold out because the shops simply cannot keep up. They're not getting enough product. People just want to open the new set, and that's a very good sign, of course. It means the game is popular, and I definitely don't think that in Denmark that there's any artificial demand. It's not people buying it up to sell it later. It's just because people are interested, and I think it's important to separate like price fluctuations, whether they are because of singular buyers buying up the whole market or just because of high demand. And at least in Denmark, and I think Europe, it seems that most of the price is driven just by high demand.
Yeah, organic growth.
Organic growth.
Yeah.
Also means probably that the prices will not fall to very low levels on some of these expensive Majestics, unless of course they're banned or the meta shifts. But if the growth is organic, then there actually is a demand for the cards.
Yeah, things will have a floor and support. That's good. So I think we're nearing the end of our time today. Maybe if people, you said that you had written some articles, if people want to follow you or find content that you've made, how can people find you?
I am at Victor Breuger on Twitter, and that is probably the best place to find me. And I've written a few articles for the Raid Times under my real name, Victor Breuger, as well. Those are also linked on my Twitter account if you find me there.
Awesome. I'll make sure to post it somewhere on the screen below so people can actually, because I don't think a lot of the viewers here will understand the Ö. Or no. If it's OE, we don't know, but I'll make sure that they know where to find you. So thanks for coming on, Victor. I really enjoyed it. I hope that you might have enjoyed it so much that you might want to come another time when we could talk about new metas or maybe your experience from Antwerp. So thanks very much for coming on. And
it was great. Thank you.
We'll just wrap it up now. To the people who watched this video, as per usual, hit the like button and the subscribe button. Help the algorithm, help me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.